Yeah, so Gen V, number 10 on Amazon, The Boys spinoff. Enjoyed this one a lot. Wasn't expecting that it was going to be as good as The Boys. You basically got like The Boys, but set in college, and it went in a lot of different crazy directions that I wasn't expecting. Really enjoyed where it went and how it ties into The Boys. Overall, kind of how it sets up for The Boys season 4. Number 9, Shrinking, the newest Apple TV Plus original from Ted Lasso and Scrubs creator Bill Lawrence. Again, was expecting kind of like a dumb, goofy comedy going into this, and it really, really surprised me. Jason Segel, he's still awesome. He still got it. Harrison Ford on TV, A+ win. Number 8, third season of Righteous Gemstones, Danny McBride's third show for HBO.
I haven't seen this. I haven't seen this one.
Post Eastbound and Down and Vice Principals. Yeah, really, really solid. Really enjoyed this.
What is it about even?
So basically you have what I would describe as is basically like Christian fundamentalist Southern Succession, but with Danny McBride. You have Adam Devine and Edie Patterson as his two siblings. You have John Goodman as his father, where basically they are the three kids that are set to inherit this massive fundamentalist Christian church empire that their parents have set up. Their mom has basically passed on, and each season is progressively how they have new antagonists, how again the siblings like just keep fighting, but instead of it being like Succession, it's Danny McBride and two other people. So it's going to just be like a bunch of insults thrown, and it's going to be hilarious. And this season was probably the most consistent and my favorite season yet. You have Steve Zahn, who comes in as like a long lost uncle of theirs, and a couple other people that show up in this season as well. You got Stephen Dorff, you got Shea Wiggum that comes in for like a brief bit, and it ends. It's probably the most consistent, and it probably like I would say like surmises like what the show is trying to go for the most. It's the one that like gets to the heart the most and doesn't just devolve into the comedy. My number 7 is Star Wars: The Bad Batch season 2. Still showing that as far as if you still want good Star Wars content, we have it. It just only exclusively exists in animation form. And I'm really sad that season 3, the upcoming season 3 for this year, is going to be over because this show has just been so great. It's brought back everything that I've loved about the Clone Wars, that era, that style of animation, and just continues it to a T. And it ends on a really, really sad note, really good cliffhanger. And then my number 6 is probably going to shock people as far as how low it is, that being the 4th and final season of Barry. Bill Hader's HBO hit show. I originally had this a lot higher, and then I just saw a lot of other shows that I liked more that I thought were better. And Barry season 4 starts by continuing a lot of what was great about the third season, with the massive tone shift coming in from season 2, a lot of the usual darkness, Barry finally seeing the consequence of his actions, all kind of the characters responding to the events that happened at the end of season 3. And then they do this stupid time jump, and they wrap it up as best they can, but yeah, that time jump kind of killed a lot of the momentum, the solid momentum. But keep in mind, it's only 8 episodes, too. It's not even like there's that much. And the finale, it left a little bit to be desired, to say the least. It's still great. It's still in my top 10. But yeah, Barry season 4, like I said, a lot lower than I would have liked it to have had it originally. So that's my 10 through 6.
Interesting. So I kind of laughed after you said your 10 through 9, and I'll explain why. Gen V just missed my list. I put it at number 11 at my honorable mention. And then my number 10 to kick off my list is Shrinking. So we had those in a similar order. Shrinking is great. I mean, Jason Segel is just so much fun in this role, and probably the best he's done since How I Met Your Mother, both in film and TV. Harrison Ford gives one of my favorite TV comedy performances of the year. He's just shockingly so brilliant in this. It's not really a sitcom, but it sort of has a similar energy. And then Jessica Williams is just absolutely fantastic also. Number 9, I put Lessons in Chemistry. This is one you'll hear a lot in the Golden Globes and the Emmys and all the awards that are coming up. And Brie Larson just gives a tremendous performance here. And it's a really great miniseries. It's really thematically powerful, but also entertaining, about this woman who sort of becomes a TV star and a chemist and paves the way for women in science, a fictional character, but a great one. And I also read the book, and that was great. Number 8, I put another miniseries, Beef, with Stephen Yeun and Ali Wong. And they're both great. And we talked a bit about this great creative team. The directors, Jake Schreier and Lee Sung-jin. Lee Sung-jin also creating and writing the show, and just how the humor and the character drama escalate in such unexpected and audacious ways. I really enjoyed it. Number 7 is the final season of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. This is a show I've been following for quite a while now, and I was a little scared that it was losing a bit of steam, but they managed to really end it in the most satisfying way for all the characters. Rachel Brosnahan is just terrific. Alex Borstein particularly has been such a highlight throughout this show, and Tony Shalhoub is so great. And again, like I said, the ending is really, really good, honestly. And number 6 is Only Murders in the Building, which throughout all 3 seasons, it seems kind of low, but throughout all 3 seasons, I just have no complaints with this show. And with this one, they made it sort of like a semi-musical in a way. With like they're like having a play that turns into a musical, and you got Meryl Streep, you got Paul Rudd. Everyone is having a ton of fun, and I could watch like 12 seasons of this show if they made it. So that's my 10 through 6.
Yeah, lot of fun, a lot of good choices there. Like I said, a couple that I haven't seen. I haven't seen Only Murders in the Building or Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, but I've heard good things. I know that everybody who watches those shows loves them. That is funny, though, that Shrinking ended up right at your number 10, and along with some honorable mentions. Like I said, there were a couple shows that were like really, really close to getting in, but I just, at the end of the day, I could like,
Yeah.
I just
We could shout them out at the end because
right at the end. Yeah, I've got a couple. Yeah, so moving into my 5 through 2, my number 5 is the 3rd and final season of Reservation Dogs. This is a show that I started watching when it first came out, and I have fallen in love with it. I love the show. I love these characters. It's so quaint. It's so mild-mannered. It's just like a great show about like, we don't get enough of these shows anymore, which is just about like, groups of friends as they're progressively kind of, going through what they're going through and growing up. This time you get it from the Native American perspective, on this Oklahoma reservation with these 4 friends as they started off this show, progressively trying to heal past the trauma of their very close friend committing suicide. And the show is, like I said, it's a great statement on it overall. And this 3rd season, right, it's kind of was in a weird spot because the 2nd season ended in a place where you're like, okay, where else is there to go? And then when they announced that this 3rd season was going to be the final season, I'm like, okay, so they're going to bring it home for this one. And they did. It went in a lot of new unexpected directions that I wasn't expecting, and it wrapped it up in the most beautiful way possible. Really, really enjoyed it. Going to be sad that this one's done.
Honestly, I have this show on my list now because after you shouted it out on an episode of your podcast that I was on. But I have had the pleasure of meeting Devery Jacobs, the main actress in TIFF in September. I actually didn't know who she was when I met her, but she's super cool, and I'm really excited now to check out this show, especially because of your works for it.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really, really good. You're going to enjoy it. That 2nd season finale in particular was like one of the best episodes of TV I saw last year. Now moving into my number 4, Slow Horses. Man, this show is slowly creeping its way up to make possibly my favorite Apple TV Plus show of all time. I mean, this is after Ted Lasso and the first season of Severance, mostly because it gets back to like what makes traditional old-fashioned TV good, but while also mixing it with like the storytelling and production that like peak prestige TV era is capable of, where you have Gary Oldman basically in charge of what I call like the backlog, washed up agents that MI5 doesn't want to deal with or acknowledge, but they can't really fire, and how progressively each season they constantly find themselves having to clean up a mess that MI5 is created. And in this instance, you have possibly the most compelling, the highest stakes that they've been in yet. Some very unexpected character deaths that happen. And it's more so, the best thing that I can say about it is that it's more of the thing that you love about the show. It's not necessarily giving you anything new, but the story and the characters are so damn compelling and awesome that you just can't help but fall in love with it. Like I said, it's the best of the best when it comes to British TV. The entire cast, Gary Oldman, what's it called? I'm already forgetting the rest of the people, but Jack Lowden as
I know Jack Lowden's in it.
Who is the younger version? Kristen Scott Thomas, that's who I was forgetting, the one who plays Taverner. Really, like I said, the entire cast of characters. The best way that I can say it is that it is the perfect melding of the workplace drama comedy with the action spy espionage thing, and it's the best of both worlds, and it somehow mixes them perfectly.
I've started to hear just now about it after Gary Oldman got Golden Globe nominated, and a couple people, including you, talking about it on Instagram. So now I'm very curious about what it is because I enjoy. It's harder to predict what I'll like when it comes to TV, but I think I'll enjoy this one, especially because I've heard it's so excellent.
It's really good. And also, very quick binge as well. Only 6 episodes a season, so it flies by. It flies by, and it just leaves you
an hour each, 40 minutes each?
Just about 40 to 50 minutes each, depending on how much. And the best part is it's based off of an ongoing book series that already has like 6 or 7 books. So not only are they filming season 4 right now, which is set to hit around this time next year, but they've also already renewed it for season 5, which already makes it the longest running Apple TV Plus original yet. Moving on to my number 3, something that you already shouted out, Beef. This is probably the biggest TV surprise for me of the year, in the sense of where I just heard, okay, it's Steven Yeun and Ali Wong, and it's about road rage. And I'm like, okay, so where else? Well, that doesn't seem like something that could make up for a 10-episode miniseries, but okay, I'll bite. It's an A24 production, and I watch it, and man, after that first episode, it just keeps escalating and going up in different crazier directions, and literally left me to the point where I'm like, okay, what is gonna happen next? Like, I'm like, oh my god, she's gonna start hooking up with his younger brother. Okay, like he's gonna like, you know, join a church and like fucking like make friends with her husband, and what, like this show just kept going in crazier and more escalating directions in terms of just getting.
That's a really good way to describe this show.
Well, in terms of like just getting baseboard down to like what happens when you get two extremely unlikable, unhappy people who have done some heinous shit in their lives and are basically still having to like basically like, you know, like try to live and get by in their everyday instances and just keep fucking over everybody that they meet. Like, it's just again, it's just great storytelling that goes in completely unexpected directions is the best way that I can summarize Beef. And even though I'm not the biggest fan of where it ended, it was definitely still worth but still worth talking about and commemorating as far as TV of 2023 goes. And as the months went on, there wasn't much else that measured up to it, which leads me to my number 2. Probably the biggest surprise for me of the year, in the sense of the Beef was the biggest original surprise for me, and this was the biggest returning surprise, in the sense of, like I said, I was not the biggest fan of this first season, that being The Bear. I watched The Bear when it first dropped. The first season, right? I thought it was solid. I thought the acting was really good, but it didn't grip me. I thought it was kind of very repetitive. It was a lot of the same. It was just a lot of, you know, a lot of people shouting at each other in the kitchen. I could tell there was some unresolved trauma there. We got like a little bit of like inklings into the characters' past and backstories. But this was the season that I wanted for the first season. This is the season that gave me everything. It's like, okay, they got the new location. They're working towards a goal. They got this renovation. We're starting to get to know the other characters. You know, we got some great solo episodes, Marcus in Amsterdam being one. And it was all kind of surrounding and building up to this massive Fishes episode in the middle, where we got the whole backstory with the extended family, which basically summarizes the trauma of all of the respective characters that we have seen on the show at this point. Some incredible guest performances, which also leads into what also might be one of my favorite episodes of TV of the year, the Forks episode, the Richie solo episode, which is probably also the best. I call
that the love story episode. I know you were about to say that. I call it the love story episode.
That is probably the best use of Taylor Swift's love story that I have seen in anything ever. Like, it just has me like simultaneously crying and like fist pumping for Richie, like super hard. Yeah, this show, it was magical. I binged the entire thing in 2 days when it first dropped, and I'm like, this was the season where I'm like, okay, this show is really something special, and I cannot wait to see where they go for season 3.
So we can keep talking about this later, but that's hopefully not a spoiler. But anyway, number 5 for me is something that you mentioned before, and that is Barry. Barry season 4, I binged all like seasons 1 through 4 of Barry in the summer, and I just loved it. Like, from the first episode, I knew I was watching something hysterical and special. And to me, there were parts maybe in like early season 3 or somewhere where it was like slowing down a bit for me. Even beginning of season 4, I was like, okay, where's this going? And I understand the time jump is very jarring. I understand what you said about that, but I think what makes the season so true to everything that was building up before it is how unexpected it is, but sort of like how the consequences of some characters catch up to each other and some don't, whether like they embrace who they are or not. Particularly the ending scene is so memorable because it really makes you think, like, what has this show been about all this time? Because it's done in both like a hilarious and haunting way. And Bill Hader is great. Sarah Goldberg, I think, needs a lot more awards attention because she is just phenomenal as Sally, and Henry Winkler, Anthony Kerrigan. It's just filled with action. One of the funniest shows I've ever seen, one of the best directed shows I've ever seen. And I'm happy that it ended at the exact right time and in such like a almost Shakespearean way. Number 4 is The Last of Us. Probably unarguably the greatest video game adaptation of all time. I actually never played the video game though, so I didn't really know all of the story, especially the shocking finale. But Pedro Pascal, to say that he's brilliant, you know, they say this a lot, and I said this in my review back when Alan and I talked about this in April, but I don't think the role of Joel would have worked as well in this show if it wasn't for Pedro's amazing work. Him and Bella Ramsey are great. Nick Offerman and Murray Bartlett are only a couple of the incredible guests. The way it's shot, the way it's directed is framing the zombie apocalypse as sort of this gateway into humanity, slowly losing its soul as one man either sacrifices or or fights for it is really interesting. Number 3, I went with The Fall of the House of Usher, which I've been a huge fan of Mike Flanagan's horror shows ever since he started them with The Haunting of Hill House, which is still, according to many, including myself, one of the best Netflix shows ever. And then he continued that with Bly Manor and Midnight Mass. And I would put this up there with Hill House because it's so haunting and gory, and also he's just having so much fun with it. It's sort of like told through the perspective of evil, and how this evil that tries to evade and deny the consequences of its actions. And the cast is amazing. Carla Gugino, Bruce Greenwood. I could go on forever with the supporting cast, but they're all brilliant in their own right. The production value, the storytelling. I think from the first episode, I knew I was watching something amazing, and it really delivers on this horror tale up until this satisfying conclusion. And then number 2 is your number 2. It is The Bear. So similar to you, when the first season came out, I think I liked it more than you did. I thought it was great. It still made my top 10 TV shows of 2022, but maybe the lower end, because some people were saying this is amazing. I was like, it's great, but I wouldn't hype it up the same way others are. And then in that 4th episode, when Richie goes to Amsterdam, I fell in love with the show.
Oh,
it just became this magnificent thing. Who did I say? Oh, Marcus. Sorry. Marcus goes to Amsterdam. Marcus goes to Amsterdam. And I just fell in love with the show because it became this wholesome thing in one episode, heartbreaking in the next. I just felt like so attached to these characters if I wasn't already. And just, I didn't want it to end at one point. I was like, oh, we're already at the end at episode 10. I could watch this forever. That's not something I say about every show. And Jeremy Allen White, Ayo Adebari, Eben Moss Backrack, some guest stars that I don't want to spoil if you haven't seen it yet. They're all magnificent. And yeah, we could talk about this forever, but I'm so glad that we agree. And The Bear is both of ours number 2.
Which means that we both know what our number 1 is, because we're probably going to have the same number 1.
Do we want to say it at 3?
It's good at 3, 2, 1, Succession. Like,
Succession.
It's obviously, it has to be. Like what? Like, come on. I feel like the minute that they announced that this season was going to be the last, it's like, okay, so this is show of the year. Like, it's going to win all the Emmys now. It's going to clean up.
As soon as they said it was going to be in 2023, it was like number 1 of the year.
Yeah, true. But yeah, I mean, oh God, like where do we even start with this? Like everything, I don't even want to say like everything we could have wanted, because like what exactly were we expecting / wanting from the 4th and final season of Succession, which also they didn't even announce that it was going to be the final season until like 2 weeks before it premiered. So
yeah, which is pretty awesome. I was like, okay, bring it on. But also I'm about to be devastated when this ends.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I think they just did it perfectly. Again, every episode, you could examine it on its own. It's like brilliant in different ways. But it comes together to create, in my opinion, honestly, like maybe the best season of TV that I've watched in recent memory. Yeah. And, Kieran Culkin is heartbreaking. Sarah Snook giving it her all. Her and Matthew McFadden have this fight scene that I like rewatch all the time on YouTube in episode 7. And Jeremy Strong, just everywhere like that their arcs go is sort of where they need it to be, and sort of reflects on these sad, embarrassing people that they were all along, but also makes it really satisfying. It doesn't feel like a cop-out to the viewers who, like you and me, have loved it since the first episode.
Yeah, like Jesse Armstrong, right, has talked frequently about his thought process, how he was really, really strongly deliberating, like whether he wanted this to be the final season, because he's like, there's the version of the show that goes on forever, and we just see the Roys constantly battling it out forever. And we have the version of the show where he was considering not even doing another season after season 3 ended, where it's like, okay, Logan wins. This just shows that like the siblings are never gonna win. But he knew that like, okay, there has to be a split the middle, there has to be middle ground, there has to be something where it wraps it up for everyone. Because at the end of the way that season 3 ended, right, it was pretty definitive. It's like, okay, the siblings are never going to beat their dad. Like, he is always going to find that one up.
And then in episode 3, something happens where you're like, oh, the tide turns.
Well, and so it's the thing, right? Going into season 4, right, when you know that this is the last season.
Season 4, yeah.
Yeah, well, going into the last season, right, you know that there's going to be an area where they're like, Logan has to die. He literally can't make it, right? Obviously, we know the original plan was to kill him off in the pilot, but it's like, he has to die. There's no, like, it
Which
does
is
not
wild,
make sense,
by the way,
if he makes it through. So for me, it wasn't a matter of if he was going to die. It was a matter of when. And so, like you said, when they do it in the third episode, when he gets on that plane and then they get the phone call from Tom, and that episode goes in the direction that it does at Connor's wedding. And right, you go into that just thinking you're going to get another like big party gathering episode of Succession, which you're used to. And then you have that phone call and the episode. I remember sitting in my bed watching it, like literally right there, earlier this year, and or rather last year, and I just remember being like, oh shit, I'm like, oh, they're doing it now. And from that point onward, the show just took up like a fucking rocket. Also, the fact that we have not talked yet about Alexander Skarsgård's Lucas Matson, who they
I wanted to bring him up.
They made a main cast member this season as like the new antagonist, the guy who was going to take over. And man, like if there's one thing I've learned about Skarsgård, who is low-key one of my favorite actors, when he's on HBO, he just cooks. He just cooks it, like, you know, True Blood, Generation Kill, Big Little Lies, and now Succession as the latest addition to his HBO resume. Like, oh man, like it was just, he was awesome. He was hysterical. He was threatening.
When you say the word antagonist, like how do we use that in this show? Everyone's terrible, right? Everyone's unlikable. But how did Jesse Armstrong and the writers manage to make us care for them so deeply like he did, which I think is a marvelous feat. The dialogue, the twists and turns, the directing, it's all just expert. You know, it comments so much on corporate values. And, you know, Kieran Culkin sums it up pretty well. It's all bullshit, but like not just corporate values, but also like siblinghood and growing up with such a father figure that like inflicts, you know, childhood trauma and environment of competition. What does that do to the children? And this is my favorite show, and I don't see that ever changing for a very, very long time.
Yeah, I think what this final season did, I should say, is that it pretty much solidified this show's placement in the canon of great TV shows. You know, like you've got your Sopranos, you've got your Breaking Bads, Better Call Sauls, you've got your Wires, you've got your Game of Thrones, you've got your Mad Men's, and now you've got your Succession. Succession has officially made that canon of incredible TV show stories, and I think this fourth season solidified it for sure.